Welcome everyone to today's Midnight 6.6 training session. Today we'll be going over Midnight postage handling procedures. Of note, we'll be describing how to receive postage payments, how to record postage used on orders and versions within orders, how to apply funds to an order or order versions, postage and services, how to change or modify your postage transactions, and how to track and monitor your postage inventory. To start things off, we'll take a look at an order, as that is where the postage handling process largely begins. Within any order, you do have the ability to add postage instances such as stamps, meters, permits, etc. into your postage tab, which you'll see under the General tab right here. The postage affixed list that's here on your left represents all the different stamps, meters, and whatnot that your organization handles. As you select these, you can fill out different options for classification along with your permit, as well as the date that your postage is intended on being sent out, a quantity that's associated with it, and then a rate, so that way your charge can be calculated per piece. You can also fill in a total weight, which is a simple summarization of the weight associated with the pieces or parcels that you're sending, to give you a postage used total. Now you may have instances, like with the client permit, that there is no charge for. In this case, you can simply have your total set as 0 and then update the postage rate to account for that. But for your other instances, like your stamps, quarter, 33-cent, whichever stamps you've got, you'll likely need to account for them in a standard process that allows you to pull in a rate. You can enter a rate as you proceed through and have the total calculate itself. Or if you'd like, you can also have this function so that way if you select a total, then the rate will or will not calculate itself backwards. For instance, I just added a total, so I will choose not to update my rate, meaning that I'm not including any prices for some mathematical operations to determine what my actual postage will cost. We do have options to modify details and taxes of the postage line items themselves, and we'll get into that later in today's session. The postage used that's on the order may carry in a total that was built in from an estimate. And if you do have postage estimated rates from your estimate, then when you export that estimate into an order, the postage amount required will carry in from that estimate. The individual postage instances themselves will not, as those are specifically estimates, and you may charge differently for your postage, depending on what type it is. You can use this to prepare a postage prepay invoice to send over to your customer for advanced forms of payment that need to come before you do begin a job. The actual instances of postage are all monitored through this tab. The postage records themselves and the classification options are controlled through your admin menu. The other fields like date, rate, and whatnot, they will all be hand entered as you go through your daily job. You'll also notice that in this job, our postage used is $19.27 for my example here. If we were to say copy our version and make a secondary version within our job with a different quantity and a different date, where the service information, comments, and pretty much everything else will carry into the new version. You can tell by the green underlit lines. The Postage tab does not carry in its postage information from another version. That said, you do see a summary of the current postage used and the outstanding postage that needs to be paid on the job, which always displays in this on the order level or for the entirety of the order. In this case, you can add again whatever other methods of ship that you have to account for. And you can have everything add up across the entire order as it needs to. Now, if you'd like to make a payment against the postage or services that a customer has, you do have to do a couple of things to make sure that that payment can actually happen. For starters, under the CRM, you do need to enter your customer record and make sure that they have a postage account to receive funds to. If you try to receive funds from a check or a wire transfer and they don't have an account to place the funds into, then the funds cannot actually be received. You can add new ones under the Customer's Postage Accounts tab. In many cases, you may have several different postage payment accounts. In this example, my customer will have a main payment account and also a UPS account, so I can choose which account to receive the funds into for either general payments for shipping or for general payments for services plus shipping, whatever I'd like to define it as. Once you've made sure that your customer has an account that they can receive payments against, there are a couple of different ways to receive funds to that customer. You can go into the order, and within the job, under the Postage tab, you can receive funds by clicking the Receive Payment button. In this case, because we can tell our customer has no escrow, we'll need to receive funds in order to account for the payments that need to be made for the job. So if we click Receive Payment, we'll be presented with a pop-up that allows us to pick and choose information as to where we want to place the funds received, what the check number would be, what the amount received will be, and whether we're earmarking the funds specifically to this job or placing them in escrow to make them available for all jobs for this particular customer. You'll notice that this was set to earmark by default and the order number was predetermined based on the job that we're currently in. If you set to escrow, because these funds are not classified as being marked against one specific job, there is no order to tie the funds to, and therefore there's no lock that prevents remaining funds from being selected on other jobs for this particular customer. And this may come from a use case in which a customer gives you a check to pay for, say, 3 orders that they've placed over the course of a week. In this case, we'll place the funds into escrow. We won't leave a memo, and we'll click Save and Close. We'll see that we have $5,000 available for all jobs for this customer. Also, for the sake of this example, we'll also earmark funds. We'll only earmark a small portion to indicate a process that'll account for a different method of payment in a moment. So what this shows is that we have $25 marked against this order, and we have $5,000 marked for this customer. At this point now, we don't have anything applied yet. As we can see, our postage applied count is 0, and also our services applied count is 0. If we click the Apply Funds button, then we can begin to apply funds from our various checks to the order. To start, we can pull funds from the main account, which represents funds from 2 different sources, the earmarked and escrow funds. It will start by asking us to take the funds from the earmarked instance first, and then anything else will come from escrow in a separate application. So in this case, the $25 that's earmarked to the job will be the first of what we attempt to apply. I'll click Save and Close to commit that $25 payment. Now we have our remaining postage balance and also our services balance listed up here. If we hit Apply Funds again, we can now pull funds from the other check. This allows us to pull the remaining $4.01 to the job. And if we want to make a payment against the services as well, then we can either apply the remaining balance in escrow to our services, or we can receive and do this whole process with another check. In this case now, we can see that we've made a payment total against our postage for the entirety of the job. And we've taken a chunk of remaining funds and applied them to the services for the job. Now, the reason this amount appears to be different or larger than it needs to be is because the order number for the total and tax that we see here at the top is only showing us information for the screen that we're in, or the version that we're in. We can see under the Versions tab that there is a grand total of over $5,700 for this job that requires payment. We've paid off the entirety of one of our versions, but the other one still needs payment made against it. This will bring us to our second step of payment. You can go into your Tools module, and within here, access your Postage core module. In this case, you can receive a payment by selecting the customer, filling in the account that you'd like to receive the payment against, doing everything you'd need to do, assign a check number, an earmark or escrow, all the same stuff that we saw on the screen a few minutes ago. In this case now, we do have more funds available for our customer. In fact, if we click the View Balances tab, we can see that for Keene, the funds that are available in escrow are just what we've received. The funds that have been applied or marked against an order exist under this Earmarked and Applied tab to let us know what our postage has been paid for. And if we'd like to apply a payment, we can do the same thing by entering the customer here, picking the check that we'll use funds from to make a payment against. And should we need to, we can select any order that we have to apply a payment against from there. We can also go into the Adjustments tab, and this is the method I'd select under normal circumstances. In here, we'll pick our customer. We can see a balance of funds available from all of our checks. We can select our check, pick an order that our funds need to be marked against, identify what we're making a payment against, and plug in the value of what payments we're making. Give it a transaction date, in this case we'll post data, and click Save. And now we can see that we've pulled, in this example, $1,000 towards the services of this particular job. Now our check total detail shows that there's $5,500 worth of accounted funds in this received check, but we've only received $4,500. If we try to save out at this point, we'll actually receive an error telling us that our check amount does not equal the transactions summed together. So what we'll have to do here is edit the row that our escrow funds are from. So that way the sum of all transactions of every dollar and cent on the particular check is logged to equal the original amount of what the check was to begin with. If we go back into the job, we'll now see if we enter the Postage tab that we have additional funds that have been applied, and the remaining balance is that amount from the check. Now, if we'd like to see what applications have been made so far, we can click the checks button here. This will pull up a transaction log that shows the checks that have been received for a particular customer. So if you need to pull funds from a check, you can see all the checks that the customer has. They also list them chronologically, so that way if you'd like to pull funds from a check in the order in which it was received, you can just move down the list from top to bottom to make sure you pick the correct check. Finally, we can see that we have over-applied a little bit. So if we do need to make an adjustment, we can go back into the adjustment screen and simply take the difference and do pretty much what we just did, only editing the lines to reverse the difference of what the funds difference should be. In our example here, we've applied $59.95.99 to our services, but our total is $57.98. So we have a $197.05 difference to account for. That means if we go into our tools postage, and we pick a check to adjust the funds from, and when we take out the funds from the services applied portion, everything will equal out. Now we can do one last check in our view balances list. Here we can see that our escrow balance has been adjusted to what it should currently be based on all of our payments made. Now there's a few more things that we can do in terms of monitoring our postage. We have a handful of areas that you can go to check your individual postage balances. We'll start by looking at the postage inventory here. Under our postage inventory tab, we can use this to monitor the stamps and such that we have to order in order to maintain our supply, so we can actually make our postage counts for the shipments that we need to do. You'll see that I have many checks here for received amounts and adjustments for disbursements. You can control these by going into your quick links and selecting either add adjustment or add disbursement. If you do your disbursement, then you have to simply select the check number. Fill in what your payment would be and what it is that you're ordering, as well as how many and what the total would be. We'll now see our transaction for the stamps that we just had to order to complete this job for this customer, as well as any others that come up. And if you need to make an adjustment, you can do the same thing. Fill out your information here, mark a deduction as needed, put whatever the difference would have to be, and identify why you're making the adjustment. For instance, non-recoverable due to water damage. From here, we can also take a look in our reports module. In here, we'll see a handful of postage reports in our postage report subfolder. The key ones that you'll be looking at include the postage used by date report, which shows the list of all postage used from your orders that's been added over a period of time. In this case, the 3 postage used dates for my 3 line items of the 16th and 17th, as well as their version number, are listed here. The counts, the totals, everything sums together to let you know what your customer's balance may be for a particular postage amount over a time period. And if you have to send a list of this information to your customer to give them, say, a month's worth of postage payment history and advance notice, you can use this to do just that. There is also the report postage used by no date. This will look for any item of postage that's marked on a job that does not have a date against it. It will let you know the customer that it's for, what the job number is, and details on the postage instance itself, as well as the version it's located in, so you can go in and apply a date if needed. The postage detail by customer report will show you a variety of information related to the payment ins and expense out for your particular customers over a period of time. In this case, if we select our customer and show a log of the transactions that we just made, we'll see our checks in or check received transactions. Here's the 5,000 in, 25, and also the 4,500 in. And we can see the applications of funds of postage and services made to our particular job and how much those transactions were. We also get a running total, which means that from our start date in our search filter, this is the customer's current balance. And with the historical log of all transactions, we have the ending balance for this particular customer. If you're on this report for multiple clients, then your end balance will actually be the sum of all of your customers' end totals, which is why this number is so high compared to Keen's balance that is just over 3,600 here. And summing together transaction balances for all of our customers. The postage checks received by date range report will also find use as simply allowing you to identify when a check has been received, if it was against a particular job, and if so, how much was pulled in for it or was placed into escrow if there's no job number associated. The postage balance customer summary report shows pretty much what we saw on the screen a few minutes ago regarding the escrow balances of a particular client and what funds of theirs have been applied or used on orders. In this case, we can see all of our postage information and not our service payment information. So we'll see that we have $29.01 of postage that have been used on orders for our Keen customer, and also that every dollar and cent has been marked as paid. For another customer, like my virtual systems development, I have a $42.23 postage balance that has not yet been paid for. We don't have it earmarked against the job for a future payment either, which lets us see that our balance is outstanding by $42.23. And for other customers, you may have instances in which more funds have been applied than you see for postage. Like for my Gary Howe account here, we can see that we have $15,000 applied or earmarked versus $2,100 used. This implies that more funds have been earmarked to a job in order to pay for services in the future, but have not yet been necessarily classified to services. We also see the remaining balance in escrow to give us a total balance of what's currently available to apply for our customer. Anything with a parentheses around it implies a negative or that a balance must be paid by a customer to make sure that their outstanding payments are going to be covered based on the orders currently in your system. Whereas any positive number indicates that you have more money available for that customer to either assign to their jobs or to assign to future jobs. The last reports in here that you may find some use come from the postage inventory report and postage inventory balance summary reports. The postage inventory report allows you to see a log of your ins and outs as far as your postage instances go, your meters, your stamps, everything. You can see if a particular postage affixed type has been ordered. In this case, we have our check for the order of stamps from Acme Print, showing our total balances and counts, as well as provisions made from other vendors and their totals if necessary. And you can do a search by postage device and by date range to see your historical transaction list and consumption log over a period of time. And finally, our postage inventory balance summary report doesn't show all those individual transactions, but it does show a quantity balance. This quantity balance is the sum of all postage used counts on orders of a particular postage type, and also all the postage count transactions made from the postage inventory menu, implying that the postage used counts and orders are the amount consumed, and the postage inventory balances in this screen are the amount taken in. Ideally, you won't want negatives in here because it implies that you've overdrawn your postage type of a fixed type. But if they are negative, it also communicates to you what exactly you need to order to fulfill the needs of all of your outstanding orders to date. It also takes the amount balance by looking at the total amounts from this particular screen and calculating them against the totals from the total used amounts that are on a particular order to let you know what your balance would be, meaning that if you do need to order more, how much you may need to prepare to expend out in order to fulfill that need. To complete our training, we'll take a look at the admin menu. In here, we'll see the controls for some of our different screens. For starters, we'll look at the admin menu's postage submenu. In here, if we look in our postage affixed sublist, we'll see all of our different postage affixed or postage types. These include the stamps, meters, permits, and everything else that you might have to use for your customers. The name is what you'll see on your documentation as you fill it in within Midnight. The description you'll also see, but it probably won't vary too much from your names. The GLID and INV item columns refer to exported data out of Midnight and into an accounting program like QuickBooks or Peachtree. Knowing that if you don't have a GLID or an inventory item, specifically a GLID, then your order, when it's exported, will not include information. This can be useful for things like your client permits, in which you may not need to worry about exporting out a payment that would be, well, not made against a particular form of postage. The other information that you see here for these other columns, like postage bank account, WB permit number, etc., they refer to our window book integration. If you're not using Midnight's window book integration, then you don't need to worry about those columns at all. And finally, depending on where you're from geographically, you may need to tax your postage. Certain countries that use Midnight or have Midnight users do have to worry about taxing their postage, like Canada. And in those cases, they just need to make sure that this taxable checkbox is checked. You can add new instances of postage by going to this dark gray row here at the bottom and filling in your different types, giving as much accuracy as needed before clicking the Save button here to commit it. Alternatively, you can edit your different postage rates by clicking the Edit button here and making the changes necessary before clicking the Save Disk button to commit it, knowing that if you want to get rid of it from a particular list, for instance, you no longer carry that particular stamp, or you double entered something, then you'll need to just deactivate or uncheck the active checkbox and then click your Save button. We don't necessarily support deleting many areas within Midnight, and that is due to historical integrity. If you delete some old data and then you have to go back into an old job to copy that job for a reorder in the future, a political job, for instance, if you do have postage instances marked against it and you try to copy that, but it's been deleted out of the system, well, there's nothing there to really copy. In this case, we just simply allow you to deactivate the value, and therefore it's not something that's referenced. The other areas that you'll see that matter in this case more or less pertain to the data postage tab of the estimate and order, which we covered during our estimates training. The mail category, mail class, geography, sort, pretty much all of those relate to either defaults that you can assign to a customer or to an estimate or an order. The postage estimate rates refer to the estimate only, and these are the numbers that will help populate that value for a postage prepay invoice. These are updated by us in line with the United States or USPS Postal Service numbers as they're released. If you do need to customize this list, you can do so just like we saw on the screen before by clicking Edit or adding new options at the very low section of this particular page. And the same goes for the other screens like mail category and whatnot. Mail class, however, does relate to the different options that were in that classification dropdown within the postage affixed list. If you do have to account for different options like different methods of first class, you can add those in here. And as a reminder, all that info that's related to the data postage tab, sort, geography, post office within a particular region, those reference the tabs that we'll see in this screen, again under the data postage tab. Other areas in the admin menu to look at include the accounting postage account submenu. In here, this is where you'll define the different postage payment accounts that you can assign to your customers. Just like in the other screens, you can edit them as needed, create new ones, or turn off ones that you're no longer using. Do note that there is a default checkbox in here, but this is not yet being used. In the future, this may have some applications, but right now it's not anything that's working towards any particular method of logic. So if you check or uncheck it, it's simply information to you. The postage types list is a list that should not be edited to any high degree, but does give you a couple of controls. In the postage accounts and the postage types, you do have the ability to add a GLID. For QuickBooks users, you can export information related to payments that are made to your jobs, and you'll just need to define those GLIDs so that way they get mapped to the correct payment accounts in general, or at least payment type in general within QuickBooks. And this is where you control those. For the others, again, you do not want to modify them as they would affect your standard methods of midnight usage. And lastly, if we take a quick look at a couple of invoice or other reports that are generated out of the job that you would assign your postage to, where we saw the main reports that handle our postage information as a whole. Other reports like an invoice will show the payments that are associated with a particular order, as well as the postage balances that come to make those payments against. In this case, we'll see on this standard invoice our 4 instances of postage across all of our versions, and our transactions made, including the checks that the funds came from, what the balances pulled in were. And on page 2, after a sum of all of our transactions, we'll see a postage used total, as well as a payment applied, which accounts for both services and postage, to show a total remaining balance to your customer. Other reports will show this differently. For instance, if you need to split things out by version, or if you need to see the line item pricing. So explore different invoices and see which ones meet your needs. Additionally, there is the postage prepay invoice, which comes with your orders, and this, like I said earlier, grabs information from the job, but this postage amount is the value referenced from the data postage tab's postage amount required. In this case, we'll save it as $29 on the dot, rerun our report, and just see to make sure that that field is populating as we'd expect it to. You also see the postage affixed and postage due in cells. These relate to the postage affixed dropdown and postage due dates that are listed here. You can fill them out for just general summary information to present to your client, or so that way they can be displayed on a report like this. That concludes everything for today's training on Midnight's applications of Postage. If you do have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to us at support@printreach.com or by giving us a call at area code 425-828-9495, extension 2. Thank you very much for attending, everyone, and we'll see you next time.